coming today from Mohawk. I mean, they've helped us out in the past. Jeff is coming from Richelieu, all right? And basically I called them. I want to see if we can replace the Japan colors, okay? I'm really not happy with the Japan colors. I've seen the bills, and Greg is telling me I could save some money on it, and he's telling me the quality is a little better. So I want to give them a shot. Let's see if they could recommend something else.
Sure.
I think it's going to be easier to use, okay, and it may be less expensive.
Okay, great.
So I want to get the go-ahead from you. I mean, I know you've had some issues. I've had some issues with the settling of Japan color.
Right.
And when we do large quantities, I know we got a guy mixing all the time.
Yes.
And I want to stay away from that. All right, what are you thinking?
I'm thinking along the same lines you are.
Yeah.
And it takes a lot of time to stir up a Japan color. If I mix the stain the night before for the next day, it'll take me a good half hour to get the sediment off the bottom.
Right.
And it's very time consuming. And then in the meantime, while we're staining the Japan color, if we're staining a big job, we have to constantly keep it mixed. Otherwise, it settles. It settles very quickly. You know, it's just getting to be a pain in the neck. And I thought maybe there might be something different.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. Let's give it a shot, and then we'll make a decision. So this morning, I want to introduce Greg from Mohawk and Jeff from Richelieu. We called them in today because we want to see how they can help us out in the finishing department. Basically, Greg's going to show us some of their products because we've been talking to him about it, and we're kind of interested in making a move toward Mohawk. He's been a big help to us. What we started doing recently is we had the stain that we wiped. We used to wipe the stain on, but now we're spraying the stain, and the result was unbelievable. Okay, we loved it. The quality was fantastic, and quite honestly, the savings, instead of 32 hours, it took us 3 hours. The savings is unbelievable. So we want to thank you for that. Jeff we use basically for all our hardware needs, and he's a phone call away. If we have a problem, he's there. And recently, with the addition of Mohawk, we started using him more and more for our finishing products. So I want Greg to just basically show us what you got, because you know we want to start using your product. We want to see how you can save us money and how you can increase our quality.
Yeah. Hi, I'm Greg Massica of Mohawk Finishing Products. We are an industrial supplier of stains, coatings, dyes, fillers, anything soup to nuts when it comes to finishing. Bobby here is the finisher at Tatco, and Jeff here is one of our local distributors of the Mohawk product. And what I'm doing here is I'm talking to them, as I do in a lot of shops. I try to educate the customer about color and how to achieve color, because too many customers try to achieve color in a single step, and that is okay. But a lot of times shops like this one are giving what they call furniture grade samples, cabinet grade samples, where very often there might be a couple of different color steps to the finishing process. And you have to be able to recognize that and be able to embrace that and be able to do that in order to execute the look accurately, thereby saving you time, effort, and cutting way back on rejection. Now, in finishing, basically, like I like to tell people, when it comes to staining, there's really pretty much just two types of stains out there that are being used. One is called a dye stain, and a dye is as it sounds, it's a dye. You dye your fabrics, you dye your clothes, but these are wood dyes. These are meant for dyeing the fibers of the wood, creating a background color, and potentially a tinted color when shading, okay? Very often they are put down as the first step in a finishing process. Then they're possibly locked down, and then they're gone over with the second type of stain that is out there. It is a pigment stain, all right? Pigment stains imply just that. They're made from brown pigments, which eventually come from the earth, dirt or whatever, and they're mixed with solvents and colorants and dryers and what have you, anti-settling agents, which is a hallmark of our product. It can sit on the shelf for a long time, and after just a quick shake or stir, it's back in suspension. That's a huge advantage in a lot of these shops, because they're not fighting the product getting off the bottom of the can, which I guess is part of the problem here when they're making colors. And so what I want to do is I want to demonstrate how the products are used and how you can shift a color one way or another just by changing the background or changing the foreground color, thereby achieving a variety of looks on any given species. Yeah, as I was saying a moment ago, dyes are used very often as a background color. Now, since the dyes are a fairly strong concentrate, we generally recommend they be reduced to be used, because dyes are most efficient when they are sprayed. Okay, you can wipe them, not a problem, but they are more efficient when they are sprayed. But to spray a full-strength dye is a little tricky in that you get a very intense color very quickly. The beauty of dyes is you can keep applying and applying and applying, and they really don't reach what they call a saturation point.
Greg, I'm sorry, I have a question. Can the dyes be diluted?
That's what I'm about to do.
You can, okay,
That's
great.
what I'm about to do.
Yeah.
So what I generally do is I take this happens to be yellow, burnt umber, and oxblood. Okay, can I have the yellow over there, please, Jeff?
There you go.
Thank you, sir. All right, I am going to take a yellow dye, and you may say to yourself, yellow, and you'll see as I pour this out that, and here's where you have to think outside the box. You have to think what I call, don't think one-dimensional, okay? Now this dye it has no settling in it, there's no pigments in it, it will not settle. It can't settle, okay? Agitation is not necessary. Just open and pour it. That's the way the dyes are, okay? But if you're gonna spray a dye, I often recommend the appropriate solvent, which could be a couple different solvents in this case. Dyes today are not alcohol-based, not ours. They're acetone based, because the other solids are heavily federally regulated for smog, VOCs and what have you. So we generally recommend acetone as a appropriate solvent for the dyes, because acetone is not acetone really doesn't produce smog, VOCs. So I pour it in. You see, I'm not doing that accurate, but I'm doing about a 1-to-1 cut. I'm cutting the dye in half. Still looks fairly strong, hard to see, but it still looks fairly strong. But that's at half strength. And what I'm going to do next is I'm going to spray the color, okay? And you're going to see the difference. You're going to see what it does to the wood. Okay, what I'm about to do is I'm going to spray the background, the dye color, onto the wood. Okay, so I'm going to show you the efficiency of spraying color, the uniformity you can achieve, and the speed at which it happens, besides the ultimate goal of creating a background color.
Go.
All right, now you just saw me shoot the dye that was cut in half on a piece of oak. What I'm going to do next is something that's very often done, and that is putting a wash coat over the dye stain. This is an optional step, and the purpose of the wash coat, which you will see eventually, is to allow more of the background color, the yellow, to come through on the final color. I'm going to shoot half the board in the wash coat, so that when I do put the wiping stain on, you'll see how the wash coat works, how it works, and how if it's not there, what happens. Okay? The wiping stain will kill a lot of the background color. The wash coat will allow more of the background color to come through. This is a very, very neat trick that is used by finishers. Okay? It is optional, but it gives you more flexibility in your color. So what I do is I take a regular sanding sealer. It could be a vinyl sealer or a traditional steer-rated sealer, okay? and which runs at about whatever solids content. I generally do minimum in half or upwards of like an 80-20 cut. 80% thinner, 20% sealer. So the vast majority of it is thinner. And the reason for that is I want to put down enough product to lock the previous step down, but not stop the next step from doing a little bit of penetration and adhering to the surface. Now this sealer, we've already cut it a little bit, so I'm going to add the balance of the thinner. So this is going to come up, this is about an 80-20 cut. It's 80% thinner, 20% sealer. And it allows you to put a very wet coat down and not a lot of sealer. Now the mistake a lot of people make is they will take straight sealer and just hold the gun back and spray it on, thinking they're putting on a wash coat. They're not. They're putting on what they call a dust coat. I'm going to do a true wash coat, which is going to soak into the dye, go in, glue itself, wrap itself around the fibers, and adhere better. Because keeping in mind, all finishes mechanically bond to the surface. They don't chemically bond. So they have to physically glue themselves around the wood fibers. And if you do it so all you're doing is sitting it on top, on top, on top, and it's not soaking into the fibers, it's not really doing its proper job, thereby leading to a shorter life of the finish. Okay, what I'm about to do is I'm about to do the wash coat over the dye background and just over the clear oak. And what I'm going to show you is how the background color can affect the foreground color, the wiping stain. So remember I said to do a very thin 80-20 cut. This allows me to put down a fairly wet coat of product, yet I don't have to worry about over sealing it. You can see by how much I'm putting down that, you know, if this had been a normal cut, I would have over sealed the wood and we would have a hard time putting the stain down. But this gives me some flexibility to put down a lot of product and not over seal it, but seal it enough so that it locks the color down. So what you can see, I've sprayed half the panel. You see the sheen difference. This half has the wash coat of sealer on it. It's very lot of solvent, very little resin, just enough to lock down the step. Now, depending on how much you need to seal it, you can experiment with solids and how thick you make it or whatever. But I did an typical 80-20 for myself that I personally like to do. So what we're going to do next, as you can see, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 different areas. So I'm actually going to create 4 different colors momentarily. And you're going to see how the background color, sealed and unsealed, the raw wood sealed and unsealed, can affect the color. So but before I do any staining, I'm going to take a little fine piece of paper, this is 400, and I'm just going to give it just a very light scuff. Very light, just enough. There's no heavy raising of the grain, just enough to maybe knock off any little nibs of that. Okay, then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a Mohawk wiping stain. This happens to be from our designer series, you know, the popular shades that are out there in the industry right now. And I'm going to take my rag and I'm going to dip it in. Let me just make sure we do one little last stir. Yeah, beautiful. And this hasn't settled at all. And I'm going to take it on a stain and I'm going to start. I'm going to first, I'll work on the upper half where the yellow is sealed and unsealed. Okay? And what you're going to see, Jeff, could I have a clean rag there, please? And what you're going to see, I'll speed this up just a little bit. You're going to see how the yellow background, more of it's coming through the sealed section than the unsealed section. So over on this side, the stain wiping killed a lot of the color, which may be the desired effect. You just want a hint of yellow coming through. Or if you want more of the yellow come through, you would put a wash coat over it. Now, this also demonstrates the importance of a background color. Okay? Trying to achieve this in one step would have been near impossible. But if you break the color apart and think about, well, what's the background color? What am I looking at back there? Well, we experimented, played around, we found out it was a yellow. So we sprayed the yellow on there. Well, should it be wash coat or unwash coat? We did some samples, we wash coat, unwash coat, before our final decision on how to proceed on the job. But just using these two products, I'm going to create 4 different colors. Now, the second thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take the stain where there is no background color over a sealed area and an unsealed area. And you're going to see the penetration or lack of. So this is, I'm starting over the sealed area and I'm going to the unsealed area. And this, with any luck, will demonstrate by putting it over the wash coat area versus the unwash coated area. You can see how that color had greater penetration on the unsealed area versus the sealed area. Believe it or not, a vast majority or a lot of finishes like to seal the wood with a very thin coat of sealer before staining, even though it's just one step. The reason why is by putting a wash coat over the wood before, let's say, a wiping stain, is so that it helps hide imperfections. Maybe you've got some little swirls or what they call pigtails from sanders. There might be some imperfections in the wood. The sealer seals it and allows the stain to take more evenly across the surface. The unsealed area, it penetrates further and can potentially enhance any defects that might be in the wood. Okay? Now, keeping in mind, the beauty of these products is, let's say for instance you said, well Greg, I like the look, but I wish it was deeper. Okay, no problem. Okay, so you can reseal it, put a rewash coat on, or I could put the stain back on, let it sit longer, all right? Because these stains don't have what they call a varnish binder. In other words, you can reactivate them and let the color penetrate deeper and deeper. There's a lot of flexibilities in products like this. So whether you like the color or not, it's not the point, is do you see what it's doing for you? Do you see how the background color kick, and if we'll clear coat this, and all of a sudden this will take on an antique, because of the yellow, will take on more of an antique effect, an older effect. So yellow is an extremely common color when you're trying to create a slightly aged effect, or you're trying to match an existing library or flooring or whatever cabinetry that's there. And you're looking at the color because the finish ambers, the wood ambers, and it creates that yellowish tone. Well, yellow in the raw wood actually helps create the wood. That's just one color. We've got greens, blues, oranges, reds, not to mention all your traditional wood tones. You know, mahoganies, walnuts, cherries, you name it, we got it. So this is this aspect of the demonstration. Okay, so I've put one clear coat over these samples. So actually, if anything, it pops the colors so you can see how the background color creates different effects. No background color, sealed, unsealed. Background color, sealed, unsealed, with a wiping stain over it. So you can see just those two things how you have 4 colors. Okay? And you seal it, top coat it, scum, whatever you do, finish it, conversion varnish, doesn't matter on the product, any finish can go over these stains. That's the beauty of them. All right? Thank you.
Greg, I want to thank you for the demonstration. I thought it was fantastic. I think what this industry lacks is continued education.
Yes.
I've been doing this for a long time, and what I notice about finishers is that they don't get the continuing education to learn new products, to learn new methods, and I think what you're doing is fantastic. And the only advice I can give you guys is continue educating the people that are doing this, because you're going to sell more products.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more.
The more they understand your product, the more they're going to use it, the better product we're going to get, and the more sales we're going to get.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.